Welcome to today's podcast, and my guest today is Dr. Masinde, who happens to be a therapist, has worked with me for a couple of sessions, and I thought it's good that he comes and shares some of his experiences, impacts us with his wisdom and some of the questions that we have today.
This is Grown TV.
So, how are you doing, Doctor?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me, Leroy. It's good to be over here. Lovely place you have here, and it's good to have this conversation with you. I'm doing well. Grateful, good, very grateful when it comes to health, mental health, when it comes to spiritual health, when it comes to physical health, and it's good to be here. Thank you very much.
Lovely. So, I think the first question I have for you today is, what made you get into therapy?
Wow. Good question. It started off actually part of my upbringing, like there were so many things that I wanted to understand that I was seeing whilst growing up as a young person. There's so many things I was seeing at home and also in society, in the community, that I wanted to first of all understand, because I started appreciating that relationships affect us in a very, very deep way. How we relate with each other can be good or bad, can be detrimental or helpful. So I wanted to understand more about that. I wanted to because I was also affected by just relationships, be it home, be it in schools, be it in the society. So I wanted to have a better understanding of that, because I look at the world today and I see we have a lot of trauma. We have a lot of hurt, we have a lot of pain, we have a lot of sickness. And a lot of the sickness that we're seeing is not even physical sickness. It's actually emotional and mental, based on our experiences, that a lot of us rarely get to talk about it. And being also in Africa, and as an African, have been cognizant of the fact that a lot of these conversations are rarely had. We easily judge people, we easily label people, we easily just sweep things under the rug and pretend every single thing is okay, or we see somebody for how they're behaving today instead of realizing what happened along their journey to cause them to be who they are. So it is that wanting to bring about a healthy community, healthy individuals, that led me to just want to really help people and work with them through therapy, because people are really suffering, people feel alone, and I'd love to play my small part in making sure at least people feel like they have someone to talk to and who can understand them. Yes.
It's beautiful. That's an amazing reason, to get into it, because I do think there is a trauma going around. There's a lot of people are suffering in silence. Most people are. They disguise it by their dressing, how they talk, and also some mannerisms. But you can tell deep down that they need help. So I really do commend you on taking that initiative to go down that road. So, as much as you had a really good reason to get into it, what are the hardships you faced?
The hardships that I faced is I had to first of all deal with my journey. Before you help other people heal, you have to heal first. So I had to also deal with my own understanding self, so that I don't walk with people based on my own bias or my own understanding, but be open-minded, be embracing. So that was one. The second one was, at some point, especially at the very, very beginning, many, especially operating in Africa, people are not so embracing of therapy. People used to think that it's changing right now, but a lot of people used to think that you only go to therapy when things are really, really bad and dire. And so people, we brush off therapy until the very, 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 very last resort. And slowly that is changing, but that was definitely a challenge. And I think also the third challenge was getting men to see the importance of therapy, because we are in a society where largely men are being told that their emotions don't matter, toughen up, act like you got it all figured out. And so I remember a lot of the times having sessions being cancelled because the man just doesn't want to participate. And some of these are either a couple or the man himself, or maybe a friend booking for a man. So there was that particular challenge. It's improving right now. More men are embracing therapy. They're seeing that talking about their struggles, their fears, their dreams is not weakness. It's actually beneficial to them. And especially it just blows my mind whenever a man comes into the therapeutic space and then leaves asking himself, I should have done this a long time ago. Like, this is really, 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 really good, because it helps somebody to understand themselves better. I usually like to say that therapy allows you to tell your story, allows you to understand your story, allows you to own your story, and then finally allows you to shape your story. So the sooner we embrace therapy, the better. And of course, the fourth one has been, sometimes you find that people definitely they want to participate in therapy, but they lack the finances, they lack the resources to actually engage in therapy, because it's a service that is being given. And so that's why I also have a number of initiatives where I get to do therapy sometimes on pro bono, where if you communicate that you're not in a position to pay for the service, then the ones who are able to pay, at least they subsidize for the ones who can't.
Okay. All right. On that point, could you, because most people probably have the mentality that therapy is done, well, primarily in service of others, to help people become better versions of themselves. So I think they don't really understand why it's important that they pay for these services, because they think that if you really are intent on helping them become better versions of themselves, why do you have to charge them? Why do it from the heart?
Good question. Yeah, good question. Well, charging for a service doesn't mean that it's not being done from the heart. You can do, there are many people doing a lot of things from the heart and they still charge. A very good example is that when you are physically sick, where do you go to? You go to the hospital or to the clinic. Do you pay there? Yes, you do. You pay there, you pay for that service. Why? Because it's supposed to treat your physical ailment. But what about when your sickness is emotional or mental? When you look good, just as you said at the very, very beginning, you're dressing well, you look the part, maybe you even have a good job, or you come from a good family, so people expect that, okay, you have every single thing is going well for you, so what is wrong? So what happens when you have these emotional, mental, deep cut wounds? Where do you go to? The same way you go to a physical hospital for your physical ailments, now you go to therapy for your emotional and mental sicknesses, where you go get treated. So it's the same principle as a service that is being given. This is you come in to see somebody who has invested time to understand the human condition, and somebody who's there to be able to be of support to you. And sometimes resources are being used. If the therapy is being done virtually, the internet has to be paid for. If the therapy is being done in an office, the office needs to be paid for. If the therapist is investing time to listen to you in talk therapy, then that time is of value, and that's why the principle of a charge comes in. And I just like people to see it as an investment, because here you're investing into your emotional and mental well-being, especially at a time where people are stressed up, they have a lot of burdens, and in as much as we are now 8 billion people in the world, many of those billions feel alone. Many of those billions feel like they don't have someone to talk to. They have a lot of contacts on their phones, hundreds or even hundreds and hundreds of people on their phone and thousands of followers on social media, but no one to talk to. So this is a service you're coming to. This is an investment you're making. It's for your good. It's an act of self-love. It is because you love yourself, then you invest in yourself.
Wonderful. It's a really strong point, taking it as an investment. Because if as a person, as an individual, if you aren't feeling 100% okay, more likely than not, other spheres of your life will be affected. So it's a very powerful point, taking it as an investment.
And even just actually on that point, I totally agree with that. Because your relationship with yourself and how you process your experiences affects every other thing. It will affect they're what we call even somatic illnesses, where because you're not emotionally or mentally okay, even your physical well-being is affected. So some of the physical sicknesses we're seeing are actually born out of emotional and mental sickness. That's number one. Number two, it can even affect your finances. It can affect how you relate with other people, whether you are married, in a relationship, you are a parent, you are a sibling. It can affect your work. It can affect so many aspects of your life, because the aspects of your life are interconnected. They're interconnected. So this is why it is a good investment. You don't want to be somebody who's doing well, or perhaps appear to be doing well professionally, or appear to be doing well in terms of your physical look, but in the inside, things are not so good.
Now, probably some of our listeners would like to know. You mentioned that one of the hardest things that you faced was getting over your own trauma.
Yes.
A question based on one of the hardships you faced, which is dealing with the men therapy. So, for Guy, as you've said, many don't believe in therapy. Standards set by society, and this has adverse effects on them and their loved ones and people around them generally. So, at what stage do you think a man should start therapy? Based on that, the society thinks that they should not have therapy at all. They should be strong enough to deal with their own issues without the intercession of someone else, of a third party. And how do you change this whole narrative of therapy for men?
Good question. Unfortunately, for a lot of men, we want to be perfect. We want to have every single thing figured out. And our society puts pressure on us to appear to have every single thing figured out. And so when things don't go as planned, when we forget, when we fall short, we feel useless. We feel like we're not good enough. We feel like we're not man enough. But that's not the case. That is not the case, So we need to take away this pressure that we are putting onto the man. Yes, it's good to have expectations and goals and things that you can strive for, but to be able to realize that life is not about being perfect. It's about growth. No one of us can ever be perfect. It's about growth. And now there's this saying that men usually like to say, that the boy child has been neglected. Now I want to take it a bit further. Who has neglected the boy child? And if you look at look at the question itself, even let's take it even a bit further. Have you, as a man, neglected the boy child that is you? Because in every single one of us men, there is a boy that perhaps was traumatized. There's a boy that perhaps went through hardships whilst growing up, maybe bullied in school, maybe grew up in a home where the parents were not so embracing, or maybe perhaps wanted to have a certain dream and then that dream did not materialize. So there's a wounded boy in many of us men. Have we neglected that boy child? Have we neglected that inner us? And it is in neglecting that inner us that is causing us to have a lot of issues as men. And men, whenever we have issues, we cry. But the way we cry differently. Some of us, we're crying through addictions, such as porn, such as drinking. Others are crying through violence. We are becoming extremely abusive and violent. Some of us, we are crying through withdrawing. We just isolate ourselves. We just don't want to interact and being around people. Some of us, we are crying through being bullies because we were bullied in life in the past. Now we think that it's now time to return the favor to the world and bully others. So all these are crying men. So you asked a very important question. Where does it start for a man? Where it starts is self-love. For you to direct yourself to heal, you must love yourself. You must love yourself enough not to follow the crowd, because sometimes you can be in the presence of men who mock you. Oh, you're doing therapy. Oh, you're weak. Oh, you're whatnot. You're going to talk to somebody. Nah, it is not weakness. So the moment a man loves himself, peer pressure doesn't sway him. The moment a man loves himself, he takes the path of asking himself, what is in the best interest of me? What is good for me? How can I heal? Because when a man heals, the people around him are blessed. Because as men, we are powerful. But when we are damaged and wounded, we don't act in our power. In fact, we cause more problems than solutions, and yet we as men are solution providers. So we need to come to a place of self-love and be like, I want to heal. I notice there's some issues in me that I have not processed, I haven't dealt with. I don't want to be somebody who buries my head in the sand. And above all, I want to be a leader. Before I seek to lead other people as a man, I must first lead myself. And I lead myself to the path of healing. I heal myself to a path of I can be better and do better. So it starts with the element of self-love. So a challenge to men, we need to get to a place of loving ourselves. And that is where we begin.
That's an amazing piece. It all starts with self-love for the men. Do you think therapy should be done when needed, or like a prerequisite? It's like almost like a unit or a subject on its own. Because currently, speaking to the men, who have grown up, with the societal confines of them dealing with issues alone, standing strong, not dealing with emotions. So it's basically almost, definitely the fight must go on, to try and convince people to embrace therapy. But at some point, we have to consider it almost as an instance of teaching an old dog new tricks. So, to the boys who are growing up, do you think that therapy should be probably something introduced in schools, where it's like a one-on-one thing, especially in the Western countries? There's a school counselor, a therapist in schools, where when students have something they need to talk about, they can go to them. So as opposed to having that particular way of approaching an issue, would you recommend it to be a subject where, or rather almost as not a requirement per se, but thoughts where the student at least once a week is required to talk to the counselor, talk about anything, whether good or bad, just to foster the culture of therapy, just to make them feel like, this is not something absurd. Probably was not doing it when he was my age, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's something wrong or makes me weak. Actually, it makes me stronger, because now I can deal with emotions in a mature way without affecting people who are around me. Would you say it's a good approach?
Oh, it definitely is, and I was just smiling in my heart even just when you're talking about that, and I can imagine how wonderful the world would be if therapy becomes part of our lifestyle, part of our everyday life. There are two types of therapy. There's formal therapy, whereby you book a session with a therapist, and now you go to talk to a professional. So there's that. And then there's informal therapy. Informal therapy is something that all of us can embrace. Sitting down with a friend and having a genuine heart-to-heart conversation, that is therapeutic. As a parent, sitting down with your child and having a conversation with your child and just having a good chat with your child, and I'll give you a good example. My wife has this thing with the last born, where she sits down as a mother and the boy, and they just have once every Sunday. Once every week, that's on a Sunday, where you just sit down and have a conversation. So now you see, in doing that, you're teaching the younger generation that it's okay to talk, that your opinion matters, your thoughts matter, where you're at matters. So a lot of us who are more mature, who are more grown right now, we've been traumatized. And if you don't watch out, our trauma can cause us to cause more trauma. But if we heal, we can unlearn and perhaps save the next generation, and perhaps create a culture whereby the next generation feels that it is okay to talk. A platform such as, in school, you go have that conversation now with the therapists, and get to have the school counselor and get to talk with the school counselor. So there's that particular option. There are things like that can be done and can be embraced even as a community. So we need to have more of informal and formal therapy, and embracing the culture of talking, the culture of understanding, the culture of listening to each other, the culture of let's have dialogue, let's communicate, let's make people feel heard. So it's very, 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 very important for us to do so.